This presentation is on the differences in male and female violence and aggression. It is a literature review over 10 sources that I selected and found on yeah. The topic importance and then the research question that is here. So the reason the topic is important in behavioral sciences is because it directly studies how and why men and women behave differently from each other, which is something that behavioral sciences like wants to figure out. The research question is what are the main differences in violence and aggression by men and women, and why do men tend to be more violent and aggressive? The purpose and scope of this presentation. The purpose of the literature review was to view different literature on the topic of violence and aggression by men and women and examine these articles to find the differences between the two genders. The presentation discusses anywhere from the brain testosterone, testosterone disorders and genetics, to domestic violence and women's aggression. The literature search and selection. Uh, So finding the suitable sources for this paper was very difficult, um, because it was very. I feel like it maybe was a little too broad of a question, and that's why I really narrowed it down to be um, more on men, or it was too concise of a question, not broad. It was too narrowed in, so I really expanded on the question and found women and men and but the challenge was primarily in developing the right keywords, and then it led to more relevant sources. The focus of the paper, which was why males are perceived as more violent, became clear as I found articles connecting key ideas from one to the other. Um, so the female violence part of the literature review um, arose because I wasn't trying to make it purely on domestic violence. So I wanted to get a new different angle to really put in towards the literature review, and I think I found a good enough source. And what in the world just happened? You got to be kidding me. Well, I don't know what just happened, but we're staying on it. Technical difficulties, they happen. Um, The final connection of the sources examines both male and female violence, and the distinct differences are highlighted. So we the I tried to go in a pretty normal order of how it first starts with some statistics on crime and gender, um, and that it discusses that men are more likely to commit more serious crimes than women. They are more likely to be arrested and sent to jail than women. Men are also more likely to be victims of more serious crimes, such as murder and violence against a person. Women commit less serious offenses and are less likely to go to jail. Only 4% of the prison population is female. Women are less likely to be victims of most crimes, but they are more likely to be the victims of sexual offenses than men. Those were two quotes directly from the article that I felt helped the research question and help show that there is a disparity in how much crime is committed by the two. Um, so, and then the next article, which was the scientific reasons why men are more violent than women, it helped lay a basis on some things that were believed to be reasons why men are more violent uh, than women. The quotes I used um, are based on Testosterone, the quote uses, provides a partial but ultimately incomplete picture of why men commit violence. Um, the research on testosterone was that came to that conclusion. And then when it discussing masculinity and society views, social views, the article points out that some men have a limited view on masculinity and are far more likely to act violently towards the vulnerable and to fail to seek help when needed. Um, so then the final thing discusses a disorder that is 3 times more likely in males, and it's a social disorder that makes that is, has been proven can make men more likely to be violent or aggressive. The next article is an interviewer. So this professor conducted research and then got interviewed. And the questions he was asked is, why did you study the differences in physical aggression between the sexes? The professor answered, we know that in general men are more aggressive than women. Data on homicides and assaults across society show this. And the sex difference is often found on kindergarten playgrounds and in fights after high school. Then he was asked what were the findings. So the research was there were 2 parts of the research. He went inside the family with siblings, and then he went outside the family with those same people towards other people outside the family. And his findings were, outside the family, there was substantially more aggression by males towards other males, including friends and acquaintances. Inside the family, all the rules were broken. Girls were just as aggressive as boys. These were interesting findings, as the normal rule is that men are more aggressive than women, but in this case it was opposite. So inside the family, women were being more aggressive, which was surprising, and it is relevant because leading up, we think men are more aggressive, but something was proven different in this study. Then, after this one, we go into female violence and aggression, because we've looked at some male causes and male responses. Now that we know that females are also have the tendency to be violent, we'll look at some female violence. After this, the review starts to discuss female violence and aggression, because we now have learned that women can be as aggressive and violent as males, but they tend to hide it better. The first article is by Sandra Thomas and discusses her research over the past 15 years. She collected data from 535 American women, comprising the first large-scale, comprehensive empirical study of the everyday anger of ordinary women as they enacted their social roles. The researcher went on to discuss other research on different women and found different results, but the overall research found that they tend to store their anger, and when they do release it, they don't even know what they're releasing it about. That was what the research found. The next article is called, Are Women Just as Aggressive as Men? It takes a look at violence and aggression from a different lens by discussing cyber aggression. I found this very interesting, as it really gave a different look into what aggression and violence can be. The article states 80% of women and 50% of men report incidents. So if you have more women reporting incidents than men, so naturally the rate of how much aggression and violence, because men are aggressive towards women and women can be aggressive towards men. But if there's more women reporting that, then men are going to look worse. As a claim that women are just as aggressive as men. And then it states, examination of the real world research suggests high levels of female aggression, such as seen in digital behaviors, have long been known about. Beyond domestic abuse and physical violence, females have been found to emit greater levels of verbal and indirect aggression than males. Girls and adolescent females use verbal and indirect aggression, social manipulation to harm a target more than boys. This is to show that women are just as violent and discusses maybe them being more violent than males. Next, the article talks about domestic violence and male on female and female on male violence. The article, a review of research on women's use of violence with male intimate partners, states men and women violence is usually equivalent, but women are more likely to be harmed by violence. Men are more likely to commit more aggressive violence than women, while men and women are equal when it comes to less aggressive violence. Studies of couples and mutually violent relationships are more negative effects for women than for men. This is saying that women are violent but are usually retaliating in some kind of self-defense to their aggressor. The next article, which is assessing the effects of misogyny on intentions to engage in violent extremism, interpersonal violence, and support for violence against women, is discussing the topic of domestic violence, but as the article states, is attempted present analysis present analysis aims to address the limited empirical research on the links between misogyny, violent extremism, and gender-based violence by conducting survey-based analysis employing a newly developed and validated psychometric scale to measure misogyny. What the article finds are three things: that misogyny is a shared risk factor when underpinning different types of male violence, highlighting the mechanisms which link misogyny to extremist violence, while further providing evidence which articulates when and for whom misogyny may be a risk factor. This article provides a look into how society sees men and how they begin to portray themselves in misogynistic ways. The next article provides experimental evidence and is called Gender Differences in Aggression-Related Responses on the EEG and the ECG. The article confirms things with the experiment. The research finds that the brain is different when it comes to how men and women respond to situations and concludes that men tend to have more of a violent reaction than women, while women think in a more rational way. Jonathan Strickland provides an article that has two really good points in it, saying, again, women are more, report more than men, and stating here may be some motivators that are specific to one gender, or it could turn out that men and women both experience the same general feelings of aggression, but culture and society have helped our behaviors, leading to more men committing violent acts than women. But in the end, the numbers tell the story. Men are more violent. The article discusses the social aspect and how society plays a role in male violence being more prevalent than women. The last article, called Brain Development and Physical Aggression, How a Small Gender Difference Grows into a Violence Problem, discusses many different things on why males are more violent than females. Its overall best working solution and answer is prenatal testosterone. The article uses graphs to back this up and then uses this quote: using girls that have prenatal testosterone because of birthings that happen, it indicates that they are prone to the same level of male aggression because of their prenatal testosterone. Synthesis and insights. The key themes are biology, society, disorders, female violence being more common than reported, and males being more violent than females. The existing research helps my research question as it shows the differences and gives the reasoning behind why men are more violent and also gives reasoning on why women are viewed as less violent. The biggest trends were misogyny and prenatal testosterone, but the lack of female violence reported was also seen more than once. Some gaps in the research came when understanding what role women played in violence of men, as it seemed to be very misleading when trying to understand if women were a cause of this aggression and violence. As one of the articles stated, men were a reason for women's violence and aggression. Another research gap comes from whether men are actually more violent or if they just tend to get reported more. The final gap I noticed was the lack of strong arguments for men being more aggressive. Society seems to believe it's true and the numbers say it's true, but where is the scientific evidence to back it up? Two directions I believe this could go would be finding the exact root of male aggression, as it is not put out there what it is. Secondly, understanding exactly why men are more violent, are more likely to be aggressive if it is society or whatever it was. To conclude, men are statistically more violent than women, but when figuring out why it becomes difficult to understand, men tend to be more violent for a multitude of reasons, which are expressed throughout these articles, such as testosterone and most noticed prenatal testosterone. Society and the perception of men has a role in male violence and why they feel they need to be violent in some situations to show their masculinity. Women have aggression and violence, but tend to be less direct, causing them not to become a statistical aggressor, as they are indirect and are more likely to stay online with their aggression. When it comes to male violence, male on female and female on male violence, some things stand out, such as males not reporting as often as females, being more likely to be harmed from the violent acts. Males tend to be much more violent. Males tend to have a much more aggressive violence, which leads to it being reported more and causes society to place an X on men's heads to say that they are the most violent gender. Then these are the references that were in the articles. Thank you.